Welcome to another episode of Breaking the Silence. Recently, Mary and I were contacted by a gentleman named James Benjamin Pike, an artist, a surfer, and someone who has encounters. He visited us. He told us his story. We were captivated by this articulate gentleman. James, break your silence.
Right down, slide back, right up a little bit, right there. Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
So in 2006, I decided that I was going to drive to Portland, Oregon with a former girlfriend of mine. And when I was telling my stepfather on the phone about the trip that he was going to pay for, I had a psychic flash when he said 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning. And when I said that I had a psychic flash, this doesn't really describe it. I was all encompassed and I felt myself completely pulled into the vision, and it was actually pretty terrifying because what I actually saw was myself driving the U-Haul that I had just rented, and this is sort of what it looked like from my perspective, and I was kind of seeing myself, and I saw these lights on the road, and then it hit the windshield, and I immediately went into my body, and when that happened, it was so jarring that I was still on the phone and didn't know that I was on the phone. It was like I had transmitted myself somewhere, and I could see the hair standing up on my arm, and I just felt like I was buzzing, and the only way I can describe it is like seeing a ghost. And I had these big goosebumps that I could physically see them. Even now, just thinking about it, they look huge. And I tried to tell Richard, but he's pretty dry. He's a tax attorney and an accountant. And so he kind of wasn't hip to exactly what I was talking about. But when I told my former girlfriend, she thought that I should probably rest for it. So we left Montecito, California, probably around 7:35. I remember seeing on the U-Haul, and I was pulling a Honda Accord 1987 that my grandmother had given me. And so we took off, and we were obviously aware that something was going to happen between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning because I had completely obsessed about it for probably 2 weeks before. And I felt really guilty for not doing more packing, and I just had to sleep because I thought that we might die. And it was so hot that summer, that's why I was driving at night, is because she was from the Pacific Northwest and I didn't want her to get too hot. And it was the hottest summer on record. So we hit the Grapevine as we're going north onto I-5, and all of a sudden I almost crashed the vehicle at 21 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I was out of control. I didn't know to put it in a lower gear. And so I smoked the brakes the whole way down, and the whole freeway was backed up behind me. I mean, it was a real scene. So when I got to the bottom of the hill, I thought maybe that was it. And I could just be calm. But then the thought of, well, what's going to happen at 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning? Because that pretty much seemed like as close to death as I ever want to come. And so I just tried to put it out of my head, and we got on the road, and it hit 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was prepared. And then the next thing I knew, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and nothing happened. And I was like, oh man, finally. I can just rest and just kind of look around. And all of a sudden, about 3:08, I noticed 3 lights evenly distributed. And I was looking at that part of the sky, and then it flipped as I was looking at these 3 white lights. It slowly came down and descended to this field. I have a drawing of it right here, actually. And when it got to the field, I could see where the 3 lights had actually drawn a spot on the grass. And so I was like, what in the heck? I was looking at it thinking, well, why is it looking at this torn up field? Why is that so important? And so I'm sitting there and my mind's just kind of jostling, because at first when I saw it, I didn't immediately go, oh, it's a UFO. I was like, oh, that's a radar tower. And then it flipped and I was like, okay, maybe it's some kind of helicopter. But then it started going so slow, it was painful. There's nothing like that could go that slow. So what I have illustrated right here, and I'll try to hold it still, is the lights and then the flipping and coming down to the field. And then right when it came to the field, I was looking at it and I sort of had this thought of like, wow, you're looking at dirt and you just came from wherever you came from. And mind you, there's no noise, there's nothing at all. It's just completely quiet. And it was just after a full moon on my birthday, and I could pretty much see it. And it was this horseshoe-shaped boomerang. For years I called it a boomerang, but I had some friends kind of correct me. It definitely has that horseshoe look. It had a little bubble on the top, and there was definitely a metallic shimmering going on. And I looked at it and realized, I think that's a UFO. And I got really excited. And then I thought maybe this was a fleeting moment. And I looked over at my former girlfriend and I said, take a look at that. But when I said that, it heard me. And this was probably about 2,000 yards away. It came flying over, and it was so uncomfortable how close it came to me on the driver's side right here. And then all of a sudden it juxtaposed position and started flying about 20 feet in front of me on an empty freeway at 65 miles an hour. So I'm freaked out at the UFO, but I'm also freaked out that it heard me, because before that I hadn't said anything, and now here it was, and it came over and it was just this immediate aha, and it heard me. So now it's flying in front of me and it has this halo on it, and the halo is almost like a electric fog. And I could see stars that were fuzzy and then see stars that were clear. And I did that all around it. And then all of a sudden, it came in even closer. And when it came in even closer, that's when I got really scared, because I thought, oh no, what, is this like threatening? I mean, I hadn't even thought about that. Everything happened so fast. The craft itself was probably about just under 20 feet across and about maybe 17 feet this way. But the wing itself was only like this thick. And it had these really interesting rivets. It had these 4 panels, and then 2 dots, 2 dots, 2 dots, and 2 dots. But they weren't like bubbles or anything. They were just etched into the metal. And so I was that close, and I got to look at it, so it'll be seared into my mind forever. But when it came even closer, I looked into the drug light, is what I call it, and right into the center light, and all of a sudden time just like stopped. And I was driving, and I've broken this arm right here. You can kind of see the surgical scar into like 28 places from skateboarding. And when I did, I was paralyzed, and it felt like that. And then when I looked at the speedometer, it was like a rock. And that's when I got spooked, because I couldn't move my body and it was a rock. And so I thought, okay, someone's inside of your head, because you could never drive that well to make the needle just stay like that. So I closed my eyes, and now I'm on the freeway driving with my eyes closed, and this is in front of me. But right before that happened, before I get ahead of myself, I did feel this amazing euphoric high that felt like all of the cells in my body just had fireworks, and I was just sitting in this kind of like hot jello. And so I went into that relaxation, I went into the paralyzation, and then I went into the realization, this is happening. So now that my eyes are closed, I thought to myself, don't think, someone's inside of your head, don't think. And then I thought, you dummy, that's a thought. And so at this point, I see myself sitting on a little red chair in a shower, naked, just sort of like this, and I can see myself, and there's all this black around me and above me, and I feel like I'm trying to hide in my mind because I'm being so mentally hacked right now. And then I had this thought, well, if it's inside of my head, then I'm inside of its head. So that means I could ask it a question. Ask it a question. Test your hypothesis. And I thought, you'll never get this audience again. So I got really scared because I thought I was losing time. And I said, what's the answer to the universe? Well, nothing happened. I felt like my body shut off for a second. I was just like really calm. And I was like, wow, that was really nice. That was the first time I stopped thinking. And then I saw in red letters, ALLISONE, all is one. And then being 21 years old, I don't know if I said the right thing back to whoever this was. And I said, I could have told you that. Give me an equation or something. No one's ever gonna believe this. I need substantial evidence. I need proof. And that's when I felt the wheels of the car starting from my legs working up. And then it just was a series of events that happened where she said, my former girlfriend in the car, it's right there, it's gone. And just pulled over and we jumped out and we were super like excited to just kind of give each other a hug and relax, because that was just such a tense moment. And I knew that she was super scared after looking. And I found myself staring at this star on the horizon and I just couldn't get over it. I was like, what is that? And I kept looking at it and still there's nobody on the freeway. We're the only people out there. And sure enough, I ended up saying to her, you know, after a long time, you know, or she broke the silence actually, and she said, do you think they'll come back? And I said, I hope so. And then she said, I don't ever want to see that again. That was the most horrific thing I've ever been through. And then I started telling her that I felt like they were space girls and maybe they were feminine. And then she's like, oh, great. I got to deal with space girls now after being in California. And then that was just a weird point, and we were in relationship drama, and then we got in the car and just kept going. Well, we called a bunch of people to see if we were dreaming. We were pinching each other. We like called her mom up. We called my mom up. It didn't make us feel any better about what happened. Eventually the sun came up. We ended up in Redding, California. This whole event took place around Crow's Landing, which I later found out has actually experimental air base for the Navy and for NASA. They were using it all the way till 2013. It's this big X. And I've just done my own research, and there's been a lot of that phenomenon of those three different lights. But we got to Redding and I was super tired. We pulled over at a hotel. It was sketchy. We tried to go sleep in the car in the back because we wanted to lay down. No way, we were gonna get rolled up. I didn't want to park in like a right spot. And so we got back on the road and all of a sudden we're at a rest stop, and the next thing I know, we're in the restaurant and my hearing just goes boom, boom, and I've never had my hearing go in and out like that before. And then I just got white. I started feeling like I was gonna throw up. I started sweating and I just fell out of my seat and threw up, and we had just ordered food. So we got up, we trudged back to the U-Haul. We're sitting there, it's starting to get hot. I wouldn't let her drive the U-Haul because she didn't have a driver's license. She just didn't know how to drive a trailer either. We were on these mountain roads, and I probably should have let her because I was devastated. And then just out of nowhere, this guy comes in and there's this BMW and it parks kind of right behind us. And this guy just like leans in the window and he goes, hey, you look like a guy who knows something about cars. Come on over and help me out. And I went, came out, got down, sitting in front of it, looking at it. And he had no cover on his engine and I could see the pistons moving. And then I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at it just, and he goes in and he revs it and he's like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Well, each time the pistons hit, it pinged because the metal was grinding, and all of a sudden it was like ping, ping, the higher RPMs. And then he looked at me again, he's like, what do you think? What do you think? And he's just revving it, and I'm just watching the things go, and I'm like, oh man, that feels so good on my head. And then he like pops out, he's looking at me, and he's like, hey, what do you think? I've been yelling at you this whole time. And I'm like, man, I don't know anything about cars. I am so sorry, you're talking to the wrong person. And he goes, doesn't matter. I'm gonna drive to Ashland anyways. Do you think I'll make it? And I was like, Ashland? Man, that's like an hour and a half away. There's no way. And then the next thing I know, he's just gunning it. And he gave me this stare like, and he goes, yee-haw! And I can hear him going up around the pass, and it's just ping, ping, ping. And I got in the car and I looked at my former partner and I said, let's go to Portland. And she's like, who was that guy? I was like, I don't know. She's all, looked like your brother. He's acted like he knew you. What was that all about? I was like, does it matter? Like, let's just get on the road and let's just go. So we got to Portland and we finally found a place. I ended up just being so excited about the UFO, and my former partner wasn't, and we just kept getting into these discussions, and she's like, I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, that's all I want to talk about. And so I ended up just spending hours and hours and hours at the Portland Library getting books, not on UFOs, but the universe. And that's what I just tickled my fancy. And I was looking at Stephen Hawking's Universe in a Walnut, Brian Greene's The Universe is a Green Dragon, I believe. And I just, reading for me at that point was so hard, because I had avoided that most of my life. And now I was confronted with this insatiable appetite to know everything. And I was like, well, what can I know if I look at everything? And I was realizing that I was so dyslexic, dysgraphia, and had such a hard time dealing with the fact that I had to read all of the text, that I did it anyways. And I just slowly trudged through it, and I read it 2 or 3 times. And I went back and took remedial math and just tried to rebuild my whole education. And it was from that experience that I had just this explosion of like, hey, what's going on out there? What is that? I eventually parted ways with her and moved back and forth for a while. I ended up back in Portland in a skyscraper off of St. Clair Street. And yeah, 2009, about 3 years later. And my grandmother was actually about to pass away, and I kind of knew it internally. And I'm talking to her on the phone, and the last conversation that I had with her, I was telling her about this, and I was like, yeah, this happened to me. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah, it happened. And she's like, oh my gosh. And she's like, well, where are you? I'm in Oregon. And she's like, oh, you're so far away. And I felt this moment of like, oh no, something bad's gonna happen. And then that night I had this dream that it was so much more than a dream. And I saw myself come up out of my bed, and I did a drawing of it. I saw myself come in this frame right here. I'm so sorry. Come up, and I went right through this window head first. And this is what it looks like from the outside. And then this is what it looked like going through the window. And I could see all of these bubbles and space, and I went right through. And then as I came through, I sort of went out and then turned. And then I woke up and looked, and I'm sort of afraid of heights. And I was way the hell up in the air, and it was just dead silent and quiet. And then I woke up. And I immediately woke up, and my mom had called me and told me that my grandmother had died. And then I started getting kind of creeped out, because I had that first experience with the U-Haul, and then this happens. And I was sort of feeling like maybe I was spending too much time actually obsessed with this, and that last conversation with my grandmother maybe could have said like goodbye or farewell, instead of being like going into this rant about UFOs. And so I kind of got sour from that a little bit, and kind of didn't want more contact and to be around more people with UFOs, and just kind of just wanted some space. And that was sort of hard because that didn't happen. But as time went on, I ended up in Montecito, California. And oh, here's a picture of actually being taken outside of the window. And the 2 beings with me on the outside, that's I didn't actually see that, but that's just sort of, I feel like there was something there, but I just couldn't see it. So when I ended up in Montecito, California again at a little ranch house, I was there. It was probably about 2012 now at this point, and I was trying to start my own surf school. Because my whole life I wanted to be a pro surfer, but didn't like doing surf contests. And so I sort of found myself in a place of being a teacher rather than a doer. And I was totally fine with that. That was great. And I loved Santa Barbara. And so we found this killer cottage, and I was trying to get my surf school going. And I thought, this is the place. This is where we're going to do it. And it had these beautiful little avocado grove. And so this is it right here. And the night of this particular incident, I had a conversation with a friend at a jacuzzi, and I was telling him about what happened at the U-Haul years before, and he said, man, that's military stuff. That's not UFO stuff. And I was like, oh, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I'm out of here. And so I ended up leaving early, and we ended up down at Ortega Ridge here at the 192, and I saw a giant white owl. Well, to me, that meant that it was them. I was being watched. It was confirmation that the hiding that I thought that maybe I had had from trying not to think about them and all of that, no, that was them. And I knew it. And what did I do? Well, I said something that I shouldn't have, profane, and I drove away. And I ended up here at the house, and in the middle of the night, I decided to go to this little spot where I like to use the restroom, a little Call of the Wild spot. And I walked out naked, and I'm way out here in this spot, and I looked at some stars, and they looked really bright and friendly, and they were twinkling, and they had like an interesting luminosity. I remember thinking, oh, they're so friendly. And then I was like, huh. And then I walked back to the house. Well, when I walked back to the house, all the lights were on. The girlfriend that I was dating at the time was like, where were you? What was going on? We've been looking for you. And then all of a sudden our neighbor's there, and he's seeing me naked, and I'm like, whoa, I was gone for like 3 minutes tops, maybe 5. I don't even think so. What's going on? Well, I calmed everybody down. She was crying. They're like, James, we were just about to call the police right when you showed up. You've been gone for 45 minutes. I'm like, it's impossible. There's no way. It's just not possible. I was over here, and I remember the whole time. Well, I get him to go away, the neighbor, and I calm her down. And right as we went to sleep, I didn't see this because I pass out like a log, but we had 2 Queensland heelers that were puppies, and they were black. And my former partner said that she saw a white Labrador with big black eyes looking back up at the bed. And that's my best channeling of what she saw. But the next thing I knew, I woke up in the morning, and I went to go outside to my car, right? And all the doorknobs were like this, and they were all on their last thread. And so we had the front door, we had the kitchen door, we had another door, we had the door to our bedroom, and all of them were like this. And I was like, wow, there was no wind that night. So yeah, at this particular point in my experience, I'm just like, I'm not sure how to interpret them and what they're doing. I'm really just totally solo. I'm not communicating with a lot of other people about it because I'm worried that more communication would lead to more contact from other beings, because I saw something that night and it contacted me through this, telepathic communication or whatever you call it. So years go by, it's about 2016 now, and I'm in my camper, and I'm living just pretty much as a surfing vagabond, just enjoying Rincon, the best wave on the whole planet that I grew up surfing, and I just couldn't think of a more healing and amazing place to be, and I'm there every day. I was there this morning surfing amazing waves, and I was still in my wetsuit, and I just gotten a killer one through the cove, and it was freezing, and so it was in January, I believe, and I went and I parked up around the corner, and that's when I got in my car, peeled off my wetsuit and popped it up, and that's when I got in my car, peeled off my wetsuit and popped it up and just went to sleep. And so I woke up in this dream, and when I woke up in this dream, it was like it was in the size of like the Super Bowl or something. And these hallways were massive, and they like looped around like all symmetrical. And then it was really dark, and it was really damp. And there was this weird fog that was on the ground that was like this, about this high. It had this waviness, like almost like spaghetti on top of each other going different directions. And I was so mesmerized that at first I was looking around, I was like, where is everyone? And then I looked and I could see the fog, and I was like, what is this all about? And then I thought, where is everyone? And then it's like damp and it's kind of dark. And I'm like, well, why would anyone ever want to be in this kind of setting? And like, how could this be such a big place that there's nobody here? And I noticed that it was kind of a purple pastel as well. And then I noticed that there was this room right here. And when I got up to the room, it was blue, and I went through, and then when I got in there, everything was round, the floor was round, and the next thing I know, I lifted up like this, and these two hot water invisible mattresses just smash me, and I just can't talk, and I'm like, and I just remember this throttling of this muscle for what felt like 45 minutes, but I don't know, it was a dream, right? And I woke up in the pop-up camper, and I had my shepherd right there, and she was startled. And then I had my flashlight, and I was like, what in the heck is sitting down there in the bottom? And when I looked sitting down at the bottom, it looked like there was this classic kind of gray alien, but like it was weird because he's sitting there and he looks really stressed out. He's like this. And then I can see like on his face, there's sort of like veins similar to here and like spotty hair. And I'm just like, is he okay? And so I turned the light on and off 7 times. And when I did that, I noticed that it disappeared every single time I turned the light off. And so it would reappear each time. And the dog didn't notice it, the dog didn't smell anything, and it was just right there. So I just went back to sleep because I didn't even know what to do at that point. So some years go by as well, and I just haven't worked through any of this, and I just have this crazy wild dream that I wake up and I'm outside of the planet and it's just on fire. But the thing that was so interesting about this dream was the way that it started. All of a sudden, I just wake up and I'm in my van, this 1983 G20, and my dad's in there, and me and my dad, like, we love each other, but like our relationship is like been pretty tough because he's always been an amazing artist and I've always wanted to be like him. And I feel like I've always tried to impress him my whole life. And I have 4 other siblings that are half brothers and sisters, and then there's me. And so I sort of feel like kind of a black sheep sometimes, for better or worse. And I'm trying to tell him this story. Hey, I'm going to tell you the most amazing science fiction movie you've ever heard. And I pull up on this lawn at this hotel and park it and go to tell this story. And I'm like, what story am I going to tell? And then all of a sudden I end up out of my body in this little field, and I can see the whole planet is on fire. And there's these weird little satellites going around it. And then all of a sudden I'm on the Earth, and people are still surfing in spacesuits because the ocean's so dirty you can't go in without a spacesuit because of radiation and stuff. And there's all these fires, and the rivers are all black, and there's this permanent cloud. And again, there's these weird satellites. And I kind of get the idea that these are where all like the super rich are or something, and these are all the peasants that are left behind. And so the dream is that some of these people get scooped up and sent on sort of a hell mission, and in this scene right here, they get put into another planet just like Earth. and they find a bunch of people just like Earth. Well, in this scene right here, they just start taking everything to go replace and fix their Earth. But then when they try to escape all of this massacre that's going on, they end up breaking their time machine or their gravity machine. And so they make an embrace for the last oxygen. And then they end up here in the Council of Eight with these praying mantises that are like 8 feet tall. They've got these weird vampire collar things going on, which sounds really cliche, but like fully decked out in these blue robes. And in the middle, there's this dish. And in this eyeball looking thing, there's this projection of like past, present, and future. And so they're sort of telling them, hey, you need to not go around and just destroy things. That's sort of our place. We made that. You need to go back to your old ways. Well, when they get brought back, since they were sort of in between time because their machine broke and they got popped out at different places, they end up in the future like 10,000 years. And these are all little galaxies, and each red spot is a place where they've gone to plunder. As all of a sudden the military's turned into AI and the generals have turned into AI, and they're just unstoppable because they can't stop replicating themselves. So I felt like this was like a doomsday thing, and I was like, well, am I supposed to tell people about this? Like, what is this all about? So I ended up working at a winery for a while, and I had an Area 51 raid t-shirt that I got. And so I actually was working at the winery at the same time, drove all the way out to Nevada, was hanging out with some people, and was like, yeah, I got to open up the winery at 10:30 in the morning in California. They're like, what? And I was like, yeah, I just came here to check it out. So I have this t-shirt, and this gentleman walks in this one day. And when he walks in, he's with his wife, and she's, you know, definitely enjoys her wine, and you can tell she's a wine enthusiast. And so she's just going on, and they come up to the bar and they're looking at some of the art that I had displayed. I had a thing of the solar system in chalk that was really beautiful. I spent like 100 hours on, and they're looking at it, and all of a sudden she goes, oh, he's into ancient aliens. Oh yeah. And she's like making fun of him, but I'm not making fun of ancient aliens or people that watch ancient aliens, right? I'm listening, and he's just really cool, calm, not drinking. He's got like bald, little donut head, pretty substantial guy. And he looks at my shirt and he goes, have you ever seen a UFO? I went, oh yeah, you want to hear my story? And he went, uh-huh. And I went, well, I'm the only person working here and it's a Saturday, so you're gonna have to wait. And he was like, no problem. And he got kind of sweaty and he kept staring at me. And so I would come over, you know, and I'm doing my wine tasting, and I'd come over and tell, you know, a story and then walk off and then come back, and they were there for 6 hours. He listened to every word I said. And now I'm closing and they're still there. And she's just been having a great time. I've just been giving her Zens. I've been giving her White Zinfandels. Oh my gosh, we've been having a party, right? And he's just been listening to the story, and he goes, I want you to draw it out. And so I get a piece of receipt paper out, right? And I draw it out, the panels and the dots and everything. And he looks at me and he goes, we recovered one of these in Atlanta. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. This right here, you drew it really well. And when I worked for this particular agency, I had a tracking device that was found in my right hip, and I was having hip surgery on my left. And when they did the MRI, it came up, but when they did an X-ray, it didn't. And it was a square. He said it was right there. And my doctor said, so when did you get the surgery on the other hip? And he said, you know, to me, that in my line of work, this is a really common thing. And I was just so pumped up. I was like, my God, like, I can't believe that this t-shirt sort of pulled out this UFO story. And now he's like telling me this. And then I tried to get his phone number and he got super, super nervous. So now at this point, I'm like, I should do a regression. I should do a hypnosis. Like, what's going on? I see a Vice TV thing with Lori McDonald on it. and I decided to drive to Sacramento to go see her. And I thought it was going to be like an hour, and I end up going in there for like 4 hours. And oh man, I didn't realize going into it, like I didn't know if I could be hypnotized or not. I was sort of on the fence. And then the next thing I know, she's got me in there, and it's been like an hour and a half, and I'm finally starting to relax a little bit. And I just felt like this spinal cord of like 3 cords come off the back of my neck. And I pushed into it. I was like, oh. And when I did, I felt like I was immediately connected back again with the being that I had met on the freeway, and that I was seeing those eyes, and I was trying to see that image, and I was trying to feel that consciousness again and ask it questions. And what I got was like, yeah, we took you every single time. We've been taking you quite a few times. And it just, the more that I said and the more that I exploited what I was saying, I was like, oh, that can't be. That's too much. I don't know, way. That's a lot. And I came out of it with this image of all of a sudden winning an Academy Award. And I just felt like my heart all hot. And I was like, thank you so much. And I'm crying. And Lori, she's there. And she's like, this is amazing. You're going to do something amazing. And I'm like, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do? This is weird. And so for a long time, I thought that I was supposed to make a movie for extraterrestrials, and then, or make a documentary. So I went out and I was trying to do that for a long time. And I met some guys that wanted to make a movie with me, and it just didn't work out. And then all of a sudden I met Chris Bledsoe through that. And I got to talk to him, and that was the first real experiencer that I ever met that I talked to, that sort of like, I don't know, it was like almost like I was like talking to an angel or something. He's got that Matthew McConaughey voice. So my stepfather was from Virginia, and I spent 7 years with him, and it was quite difficult and torturous. And so I know there's this southern part of me that wants to connect with that male southern man, because my dad wasn't around as much as he should have been. And so I'm talking to him, and I told him my whole story, and I'm going on, and then he goes, tell me about your early childhood trauma. And I was like, well, what does that have to do with UFOs? And so I talked about my arm, and I went over here, and I went over there, and he's all, no. Tell me about what happened. And I was like, oh man. So I went into all the trauma with my stepfather in Virginia. I'd sort of been tortured by him in the sense of just verbally abused, and lots of guns in the house. And Ben was gnarly. He was the scariest, gnarliest human being I ever met in my life. Some kind of like super redneck beast of nature. And he was always there, just calling me names and making life really hard. But then I sort of had this like, oh, he's like my dad now, and it was really tough. And so I started to tell him about that, and told him that my mom and my dad split up probably when I was 4, and that my mom almost died after surgery, and then that moving to Virginia was horrific, and then just all of these different events that were all horrific. And he's all, that's it. That's what I want to know about. He's all, that's why they came to you. And I went, well, what? And he's like, they came because of your suffering. I sort of got this thought of like, God, that suffering was like so horrible, and I was by myself for so long, I mean, like at 4 years old, like outside, in Fremont, like, I was on the roof of my house in 1989 when the earthquake happened in Fremont in October, and it almost got me, and I was literally on the roof of my house 3 stories high, and I just felt so alone. And he just said that, James, you can call them aliens, but I don't do that, because if they were aliens, they'd come here, be like, hey, how are you? Let me get some fuel and let me rest up. I just came this really long way. I call them angels. And so, man, that really messed with me, because then I started talking to my mom and realized that there were all these like secrets, and that like the whole childhood that I had remembered was really dark. It was hard to do that. And I did that because of him. I did that because he said, you know, that's where you have to go, you know, is into that suffering. And so he's all, that's when they came to you. And he's like, you know, James, I don't like to use this word, but you know, there's these chosen ones, and they don't come to everybody, but they're drawn to your suffering. And so, man, that was wild. And he talked more about, you know, different things and similarities between experiencers and stuff, but he said that childhood trauma was one of these threads through it. And so I tried to like really like look over myself and like make myself, you know, available at that point to actually communicate with the UFO community, because I felt like I'd just been in the dark for so long, and then, you know, Bledsoe said so, and it just had this like effect on me where it was like, wow, I think he's right. And I think there's something to it, and maybe they aren't evil. And so I finally reached out to MUFON of Southern California, and that's when I met Earl Grey Anderson, and he took me in and listened to my story for 2.5 hours, and he said, James, I was just about to go look at some balloons. So your story just blew my mind. And you know, he has his own stories as well, and sort of just had this amazing voice that almost sounded like Jacques Picard from Star Trek. And I just sort of felt like he was this guy that was intercepting me as well, and had his own viewpoint too. And so I started going to the MUFON meetings. I started meeting other experiencers. I started realizing that those people were psychic, that we were all like connected, and that we were having dreams that were real. We were followed by owls. Some people had invisible people moving things around, and like I had all of that stuff happening too. And so I kind of got to a point where I asked my mom, and I said, hey, you know, have you ever had any encounters or anything? And she said, well, you know, I never told you, but in 1953, I was at Mount Palomar as a child, and when I walked in, I got so upset and cried so bad that I had to go all the way home. And it was like a 2.5-hour ride, and everyone was super bummed. And from that day on, I always felt like somebody was sleeping under my bed. And then she called a psychic in the 90s, late night, who said that she had been taken aboard a ship. And then just recently, she told me that there's a giant owl that hangs out in her yard. And the other day she asked me, hey, how many times have you been taken? And I said, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred times. Just trying, you know, poor shocking mom, right? And she says, well, I don't want them to take you. I don't want them to take me either. I said, well, how are you gonna stop them? How are you gonna stop them when they get inside of your head and talk to you? And she said that very next day, a giant owl had a white bird and flew up into the sky and away. And then she was driving to physical therapy and saw a bumper sticker with an alien head, and it said, we are always with you.
Wow, what an amazing story. Thank you, James. Thank you for being so brave to come forward and share your encounters, your experience, and your story with all of us. It helps so many people out there that have these encounters and they feel crazy and they're afraid to come forward. And you telling your story in the way you have, and the way all of you have so far, is going to help more people come forward. Thank you so much for that.